Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my update on books I read and books I'm going to read. For those of you who are book enthusiasts and book nerds and book lovers like I am, I think some of you will be surprised with my book selection pool for, I guess I can say it's for August because August starting tomorrow, but really just, the next 7, since we're playing with number 7 books. Comment below if you want to share the books you're reading or books you read and you think are worthy to be picked up or worthy of mention. So always love hearing other people's books. And there were 2 books that were inspired by Lynn. I'll talk about them. I love when people on their channel, Lynn and then Racine, both share books they have read. I think Jess also was going to make a video about books she has read. I love videos when people share the books they have read because, next to tarot books are like marriage made in heaven. So having said that, I had a little bit of a damp in my reading with the books I had, meaning something came up that just took my time away from reading, which frustrated the hell out of me. If you live in Portland, you'll totally resonate with this. My mother lives in Portland, well, on the outskirts of Vancouver, almost in Portland, and somebody broke into her garage and stole her car. So David and I had to drop everything and fly there to help her buy a new car and set up a security system. It was stressful and it just took me away from my readings and everything else. And it's very difficult for me when I am away from my home, away from my space. I get very quickly out of balance. So for me, I'm such a sucker for balance and groundedness, and change is not easy for me. So having said that, I was happy to be back and to finish my pile of books because I was eager to move on to the next pile of books. Books I mentioned, 7 books I mentioned last time. I have read all of them except for one because my interests have changed. So I'll share you which one I did not read. And I read 4 tiny books in lieu of that one. I was reading this fiction. I was giving fiction another try. This is My Mother in Demonology, a novel by Kathy Aker. And while this was it was a good book. Can I tell you what it's a book about? No, it reads more like a stream of consciousness. She's a good writer, but could I have gone away without reading it? Yes, this is just me. So if you want to pick it up or if you read that book, keep in mind it's more like a stream of consciousness, the way the book reads. It's very hard for me, and I don't have any nonfiction, any fiction on my next pile. It's very hard for me to get back into nonfiction, get back into fiction, because I'm such, let me just say it, I'm a fiction snob, because there's some fiction writers I grew up reading that I adore. All of the Russian tycoons, Dostoevsky, Nabokov, and Bulgakov are my 3 pillars that I adore. And then there is going to be Bulgakov on American side, along with Miller and Philip Roth. I fucking love Philip Roth. So I'm such an asshole when it comes to fiction that it has to measure up to those individuals. And so it's, it's my problem, but I think I'm not going to go to fiction for a while now. So that was the fiction. That was all right. In case if you want to pick it up, do it at your own risk, meaning you have to go to Amazon and look at the reviews and see if it sits well with you. Then this is another book that I read, Sorcerers, Dancing Sorcerer, Essence and the Mind of Magician by Mitzbilder. And this was good. This was interesting read. I really wish the author didn't sometimes wander off. It felt like the writer would go into the subject matter and then within subject matter will wander off parameter while staying in parameter, but cast a wider net, and I found this to be destructive. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed this, and if you want to pick it up, this is a great book. I know that this writer has a book that is supposed to be even better. It's called I think it's called The 3 Most Dangerous Maggie, and it talks about Crowley, Ojo, and another Maggie. I don't know who he is. And that book is supposed to be really good if you want to pick that up. But this one basically goes through different essays. It goes through, for example, dragon magic, Solomon's versus Fastian magic. It goes through vampires and the magician, alchemy, demons, and mysteries of the Goetia. And through each essay and through each particular focal point that he focuses on, for example, when he talks about alchemy, demons, and mysteries of the Goetia, he illuminates and discusses how that and what kind of mind the magician must cultivate or bring to the table in order to work through those particular contextual setups, if you will. So this was good. Interesting, like I said, for me, the author was wandering off a little bit. This one, a lot of you know, it took me a while to finish. Lots of posted here. Satanic Feminism by Per Faxneld. So how will I talk about this book? Because a lot of you have asked me what are my thoughts on this, because a lot of you have brought up in a comment section that you have this book sitting in your cart and you're trying to make a decision whether you want to buy it. And I know this book is not cheap. I think this is about $50, $55 maybe, because Oxford Press, Oxford Press academics usually is expensive. It is first and foremost an academic research-based book. The author is writing it in a way as if it is a deep research dive thesis into understanding of how Satan, which as far as I gathered, the author sees interchangeably with devil and Lucifer, how that has been viewed and seen throughout the 19th century in text. And by text, he means not just only written text, but also visual text and all other forms of media, and especially how it has the narrative of what Satan, devil, Lucifer is, has molded and modified and taken, reshaped the narrative from a villain and evil and bad to a liberator of women, to not only liberator of women, but how it became aligned with feminist movements as they gone along. And it is very, very academic. Having said that, there's some academic books that are boring to read. This is not one of them. This is an academic book. He writes really well. It is interesting to read. Having said that, I will say this. And he goes through different eras. He goes through understanding of how devil and Lucifer and again Satan has the narrative around it has shifted, starting from writers such as Milton and Paradise Lost, and then going on to, sorry, I have my phone blinking here, and then going on to Blavatsky and how she reintroduced devil as somebody that actually liberated individuals by bringing liberation, by eating an apple, by forcing or offering, not forcing an apple to be eaten by Eve. He's liberating the mankind, and then how people took that interpretation from Blavatsky and ran with it, and how that started to show up in feminist literature, and then how that started to show up in Gothic literature, and so on and so forth, and it's continuous throughout the 19th century. So it is interesting. I will say this, because I know a lot of people are interested about picking this up. In my opinion, if you are somebody who is really, really interested, fascinated, really interested in the subject matter of feminism first and foremost, and then how Satan, devil, and Lucifer has over the time became something that was adjacent to the feminist movement and adjacent to starting to see interpretation of those forces as something more benevolent, or actually as something more revolutionary. And on top of that, if the subject matter is your heart thing, and on top of that you love reading very dissected analysis of text, then this book is for you. As much as I love very dissected analysis, for me, it has to be even closer to subject matter. So if this book revolved around gender and the construct of gender, it would be my cup of tea. Because feminism and how the understanding of Satan and Devil and Lucifer it's interesting to me, but it's not necessarily my heart's calling. It was hard to put the book down and pick it up again because it demanded attention. So I want people to think about it, because I really wish this book could be condensed, and I almost wish that the writer had a second book to this book where it's more condensed version of the changes that view of Satan and Devil and Lucifer has undergone through the 19th century. It makes me think of some of the books that we read where you can see the author did all of this dissecting research, but then instead of presenting dissecting research to us, the author is simply summarizing, drawing conclusions and summarizing to us what they have found out about the research. I wish it was presented more in this form. I wish there was a second book that was presenting it in that form for at least reader like me. But alas, I read the whole book. Anyways, the guy is a phenomenal writer, very good writer. He does keep you interested in subject matter, but he's just very, very dissecting. And, at some point, you're reading Gothic literature you're not even familiar with, and how things were introduced into the Gothic literature. And so that's what I would recommend. Think about it in terms of to what extent subject matter really interests you, because it is dense. It is very, but very, very good. And not surprising, sad, Satan and Lucifer and Devil took on that interpretation as eventually also interpretation of liberator of not only women, but also liberator of the humankind. And one of the things that I loved about this book, and I'll talk more about this book, both of them in a combination, is that when you read texts like this, when you read, now I'll make an argument that you should read this book, honey. If you read academic looks through the microscopic lens of historical analysis through a particular century of a particular context that you're trying to dissect, as a reader, it shifts your perspective. You start to then understand how much everything is really contextual, how much things tend to change and evolve. And it's really fascinating paradigm widening and perspective shift widening. It's just really mind-blowing in a way. So very interesting. So that is interesting. If it's sitting in your cart, think about it. That's what I would recommend. But I'm glad I read it and glad I have it on my shelf. Very interesting. Then I have read, was interested in learning more about Left Hand Path. This is Lords of the Left Hand Path. I don't know how I have ashes all over this book. And this is by Stephen Flowers, which I have learned by one of the subscribers has pointed out. This is his pseudonym. And the subscriber has pointed out that the author, and I forgot the real name of this author. It's a subscriber pointed out that the author is, I apologize, I don't remember, either racist or sexist, or both. I don't remember. I didn't pick up any of this in this book, just FYI. Maybe in his other books he comes across like that. This is interesting because he goes over historical dissection, different type of dissection than factional dice. It's not so zoned in dissection, but it's a historical dissection of understanding of the left-hand path, starting from Eastern traditions all the way to the West, and all the way into the modernity. And it's an okay read, I would say. Would I recommend it? I think it's a good historical overview of different cultural contexts and take on the left-hand path. I struggled with the writer, with his way of writing. I felt like it was a little bit disjoint and it was difficult for me to read his book, whereas this book was very clear, very analytical, very concise. With this one, I struggled. So for that reason, I probably wouldn't give it a very high score. and it didn't keep me engaged as I read the book as well. So can I say I learned tremendous amount of information about Left Hand Path reading this book? No, I read historical overviews through different cultures. And I guess that in of itself is enough, but I don't know. I don't know what to say. Again, I know what to say. At your own risk. The books that I don't know, it's going to be at your own risk. So at your own risk. So this is 4. One of the books I read, and I don't have it with me, but I'll show you a picture of it. I sent it to a friend of mine, was this book right here. If you remember, I showed it in last video. Lilith, Feminist Writers Recreate the Works, First Woman. This was great. This is basically an anthology of women, specifically Jewish women, writing about not only their relationship to Lilith, but their interpretation of her. I found it interesting. There's poetry in it, just came because poetry is not my cup of tea, but in terms of anthologies and stories, I really did enjoy that. So if you're still looking for women writers and voices talking about Lilith, and you're looking for the form of kind of anthological writing, this is a good one. I got it on Amazon. There was another Lilith book by Stephanie Sparrow. Yes, Stephanie, it's on a book cover. This is the one that I did not read because my interest is no longer with Lilith, and maybe I'll tell a story about this. But this is the one that I did not read. And if you remember, this one is out of print. It's very expensive to get. But in my last video, I did link where you can get a PDF copy of it for free, because this was Stephanie's dissertation. Oftentimes when we write dissertations, we have a choice in the end of listing it for free for individuals to be able to find and read. And so she has listed it for free, so you can get it for free. So I have not read this book. But in lieu of that one, I have read 4 small books, and I'll share them with you. So the first one I read, the 2 first ones I read are by Connolly, Stephanie Connolly. As you know, last time I mentioned, I love her writing. She writes a lot about demonology. She approaches working with demons as daemons. She approaches them as spirit energies, not energies that you trap in triangle and forced to do things. She approaches them with reverence and respect, and I really love that about her. And I just love her writings because they're straight, they're to the point, they're great. This is a small one, but this is really good. This is called The 4 Damien Queens. And this focuses primarily on Hecate, Lilith, and I believe the 2 others, I didn't even know who they were until I learned them in here. I'm trying to find the 2 other names because this is a self-published book. Sometimes it can be hard to, there's no back matter to the self-published book. Okay, so Tazrian, I don't know Tazrian as a Damien. If you do, and if you've been working with Tazrian, you might want to work with this. And the other one is, like I said, Lilith, Hecate, and Tazrian and Delepitore. Did I say it right? Probably not. So those are another 2, but I got this primarily for Hecate, and I really like it because if you're working with this Damians, or if you want to work with more than one Damian queen, these are all 4 queens of the underworld, of the there are queens residing in the underworld. It gives you the sigil to work with. It gives you the meaning of their sigil. It gives you their N. It gives you their colors, direction, element, planet, moon phases, astrological sign, metal, stone, tarot card, Sephir, ritual magic tools, and it gives you their history, magical purposes, holidays, plants, incense, soil, ritual constructs. So meditation, I mean, it basically gives you, in other words, everything you need, including chants, how to get in touch and start working with any one of these queens. Loved it. And another one by S. Connolly that I loved is Psychic Self-Defense and Protection Magic. Again, I love her to the point, no bullshit. What I love the most about this is that in the beginning, Stephanie is very, very clear at stating that first and foremost, the first thing about protection magic is that you have to take care of your mental health and your maintenance. You have to set boundaries for yourself. You have to work on yourself. This is the best protection magic ever, which I totally agree. Then on a section, have you really been cursed or attacked? She breaks it down into, is it possible that this is just your perception? Is it possible that you pissed off somebody else? I mean, it's really, in other words, she just really, I'm trying to find a passage because I sent it to my friend. What she's really saying is before you go on to set hexes and curses in order to protect yourself, take a really lucid and objective look at what's going on in your life versus thinking that everything that's happening to you is because you've been cursed. And first and foremost, check in with your headspace, check in with your psyche, because that's the most important thing you will ever need. Here she says, I believe that psychic self-defense is basically having such control over your emotional state and thoughts that other people and even your own hormones can't emotionally control or manipulate you. Totally agree. I also believe that emotionally strong people are harder to curse and harder for energy, people and entities to manipulate. Spot on. Psychic self-defense also includes preemptive warding yourself from mental attacks, whether it's emotional manipulation from your mother-in-law, another magician trying to curse you, or an entity attempting to get. So anyways, but you get the point. This is what I love about this book. She set the record straight. She's like, you know what? Have this in check. Make sure this is clean. Have your clean boundaries. Work on your mental state. Work on your state of mind of being responsive versus constantly being reactive. Check out your projections. Check out all that internal shit, your own toxic shadow and all that stuff before you go on to curse somebody. And I love that about her. Needless to say, this book also has a lot of recipes and a lot of things in order to do banishing and in order to do all sorts of protection magic. So Stephanie Connolly again comes through. Love her. Then I was watching channel by, I believe her name is Victoria, and it's called Of Beans or Bees and Bones, I think, or Bones and Bees. Wonderful woman. I really enjoy her channel. I really enjoy how she talks about stuff. And she talked about how this is her absolute favorite book. It's called A Gracious Plenty by Sherry Reynolds. And so I picked it up because I was in a state of, I don't know, fiction redemption. Did this redeem myself for fiction? No, it didn't. But this is such a wonderful, lovely book. I read it in one day. It talks about this girl that ends up being somebody that takes care of the graveyards. I think there's actually a name for it, for people who take care of graveyards. I'm trying to find it. It's a lovely story, and it's a story of growth, and it's a story of forgiveness, and it's a story of awareness. It's just a lovely, beautiful book. So this was lovely to read. So you might want to pick it up if you want to. Final books that I read in lieu of Lilith's gender demonology was this one. I would be so curious to know how many people actually have read this book, know this book. It's called Advanced Magic for Beginners by Ellen Schaffman. Love the cover. I was reading this on a plane back from Portland like this, and I think people who were passing by to find their seats were highbrow on what I was reading, having a grenade on a book. This is I really enjoyed this book. It's just small, but so good and funny. And he goes right to the point on different aspects of magic. Here's table of contents. Nothing up my sleeve. I'm external, rub a sponge. In the beginning was a word, method to the madness, a model magician. What's in a name? Got your numbers. I mean, it's got great whimsy table of contents, but it's a serious book. And it's a book where Ellen talks about some of the basics and not so basic things of magic in a ways that we seldom see people talk about it. Not in a basic, necessarily practical application, but in a different reframing, clever way about it. I especially loved the beginning part of the chapters where he talks about the magic and how magic works. And he talks about especially really grilling down that magic definitely works and things will always manifest as synchronicity or opportunities or things of such. But it's always, magic is always going to use things at its own disposal or whatever is around it. And I think sometimes we forget that because sometimes some people have this Hollywood idea of magic or something being very, very literal. And a lot of times it is not. So I really enjoyed this book. So I would definitely recommend this book. And a final book of my 7th pile, as you know, was Jake Stratton Kent, Just Happy, Volume 1. I'm still reading it. This is also historical, kind of microscope lens looking at satanic feminism. In a way, there's 4 volumes. I'm only on volume 1. I'm taking my time with it because it is something that doesn't keep my attention for a very long time, but this is wonderful and I really enjoyed it. So this is the books I read. Now to the pile of books I'll be reading, and I'm so excited because I just love starting new books. So it'll be interesting to see, but I'm going to surprise you with my choices, and I would love to hear if any of the books on my pile you have read. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 7. Well, okay, so I'm cheating a little bit. So technically with this book we have 8. But one of books on a pile, so I'm almost halfway. I'm almost done with it, so technically 7. So this is the one I picked up recently by Sharon Blakey. It's called Hactitude, Hacks with Attitude. It's written for women age 50 up who about or have gone through the menopause. And sorry, I'm hearing, I think my husband is talking to somebody, so I'm like trying to pick up on the noise. Sharon Blakey, most known for If Women Rose Rooted book, which I started and never finished, and it's coming to me this Wednesday, so it's probably going to be added to this pile too. She's also known for, she's a psychologist. She comes from a depth-oriented perspective union primarily, and she does courses, a lot of courses online, heroine journey, things like that, women rediscovering themselves. And I picked it up because even though I'm not going through menopause, and I'm not 50, I'm 40, I'll be 43 in October. I picked it up because books on hacks and crones are my jam. I always think that I'm already crone and a hag. I never saw myself as a mother because I never mothered. I've been seeing myself as a hag and a crone, God knows for how long. In fact, I read a book, Kissing the Hag by somebody Orr, which is a wonderful book. So if you consider yourself a hag, Kissing the Hag by somebody Orr, her last name is Orr, is a really good book too. I'm really enjoying this book. It's lovely, it's wonderful. She's a great writer, and it's feeding my soul right now in the evenings. I'm going through a little bit stressful time personally right now because David and I we are seriously considering moving to Portland, where we're natives from, and buy house in Portland because of fortunate house market in Portland now. And it's partially stressing me out, but not stressing me out. And part of me is really badly craving change in seasons that I don't get here in Los Angeles. So I never owned a home. If any of you ever, if you own a home or ever been in a position of buying a home, you probably can resonate with the anxieties and everything else that I feel. So this is a very stressful period for me. So my pile of books kind of reflected because I picked up a lot of books that are not academic, not heavy, that I can just sit and it just kind of lifts my soul and lifts my joy. Loving this, highly recommend it. If you're interested, Hactitude. The next one that I just got it today from Amazon. I was waiting for this to come so I can record the video and show this. This is the book that the author was referenced in here. Anytime I read books, and I love how women write, especially women, and if they reference other women authors, guess what I'm doing first? I put the book down and I go on Amazon and I look it up, and because there's always chain of proximity. One great woman is always in proximity to another great woman. So this is called A Spell in the Wild. Such a great book cover. A Year and 6 Centuries of Magic by Alice Tarbuck. Never heard of Alice Tarbuck, but I would be very happy and really looking forward to read this. And it looks like she's going through each month. And the way I understand it is, it's different magical things. I guess you can do so much, but it's not really hot. It's also a memoir and a personal and reading from that type of perspective. So I'm really looking forward to read it. And I will let you know how it reads in case if you want to pick it up, but it looks wonderful. Then we have 2 books that we're continuing on magic. Today, I have started a Hail Hecate class with Jack Rail, which a lot of you have asked me to let you know how it goes. I definitely will do a review on it on this channel. As Hail Hecate working with Hecate is working with the spirit. I have also signed up, because I'm crazy, for Jack Rail's 50 Nights, 50 Rights PGM, which is a Greek Magical Pipari class as well, where we do 50 spells that he picked from the book, which also has everything to do working with spirits. Which I'm also excited about. And on top of what's going on in my life right now, with those 2 classes, you can see I needed an easy read. And these are all books I consider easy reads. This is Spirit Allies by Christopher Panzak. My understanding is that this is one of his best books. So I'm really looking forward to reading this as I'm moving more into the class of working with spirits. Can you just tell how excited I am? This is some of you may have read it already, because I believe this book came out maybe a year or 2 years ago. This is Jason Miller's Consorting Your Spirit. So let me see when it got published. If you don't know who Jason Miller is, you need to know Jason Miller. I'll tell you why. 2022, so it's just only a year old. Jason Miller is a great magician. He also has class on Hecate. He has a number of books, Protective Magic, Strategic Sorcery, has Strategic Sorcery class. What I love about Jason Miller is that he's no bullshit, to the point. He's one of those teachers that wants to teach you hands-on application of magic. He's not there to sit around and to come off as pompous or come across as convoluted or to confuse you even more when it comes to magic. He wants you to get it, and he wants to give it to you in straight basic terms. And sometimes you need exactly that, because you know what? Sometimes when we read a lot of heavy lifting, and oh my God, some esoteric books, I can't even. It's like mental masturbation big time by some authors, which not surprisingly are men. It's like, oh shit, can you just get to the point? What are you trying to say? Not to give Peter Gary bad rap, because I did not like Red Goddess, but I did not also like Apocalyptic Witchcraft. To me, it was like mental masturbation. I was like, Peter, get to the point. Again, to me, take everything I say as my opinion. You know, as we know, opinions are just that. Those stink, including this one. So I'm excited. 2 books on spirits, exciting to read it. If you read it, let me know what you think. Then I have a book with a gorgeous, very Georgia O'Keeffe cover. How did I find this book? I think I was a few months ago searching Lilith's dark feminine archetype, feminine energy, and this book pops up, and I saw the cover and I thought, we're getting this book. It's called The Feminine and the Sacred, and it is, I think it's also maybe an anthology. Look at the cover. Do you see that? Oh, lovely. I don't even know what this book is about. Who cares with this cover? Okay, so let me just do a little bit. Is there anything sacred that can at the same time be considered strictly feminine? That's a really good question. Is there anything sacred that can at the same time be considered strictly feminine? Is there a universal role for women in religion? Catherine Clement and Julia Kristeva, among the elites of European thought, explores the questions that arise at the intersection of feminine and the sacred. Clement, writing primarily from Dakar, Senegal, approaches the topic from an anthropologist's point of view, and Julia Kristeva responds from a psychoanalytic perspective. Looking forward to this. If you read it, let me know. Now, these two books were inspired by Lilith, not Lilith. Lilith hasn't inspired this book. By Linnen. Linnen has, I'm going to link below, a wonderful channel. She's super, super, super creative badass. And she also does the videos on books she read or reading, which I love. So I watched her video recently, and there's the two books that she loved. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm reading this. So first of all, classic, Just Kids, Patti Smith. While I read M-Train and adore M-Train, I haven't read this. And my husband saw this on a pile of my books, and he said, "You haven't read Just Kids?" I said, "No, this is why it's on a pile of my books. I haven't read it, but I'm going to read it, and I'm going to book bend the hell out of it. So you better read it," because my husband hates book bending. He hates how I abuse my books, but I love it. So I'm excited. I'm glad I saw Linnen talk about this book. It got me really excited, and I thought, for this challenging times I'm going through, anxiety-driven times, this sounds just like the book to read. Another one that Linnen talked about that she really enjoyed too is Rachel Pollack's Let Her Soul Rest in Peace, Walks Through the Forest of Souls. I'm not sure how many people know this, that Rachel was transgender herself. And I think she was such not only a gift to tarot community, but she was such a gift to also transgender community as well. Such an amazing, depthful woman. So I'm really looking forward to this. I've seen a couple of people pick it up and read it. If you read it, what do you think about it? I'm really excited. I love Rachel's. Of course, everybody loves 78 Degrees of Wisdom, which I like, but I love her. What is the other one? It's another one on tarot that she did. It's a really big chalupa. That one is even excellent. So I'm really looking forward to it. So this is my pile of books, and I'm really excited. We got Patti Smith, we got Rachel Pollack, we got Sacred Feminine, 2 books on spirits, wonderful book, looks like a wonderful book on magic and magical life, and Hactitude. And let's not forget, continuing with Geosophia. So this is my pile. I'd be really excited to hear if you read any of these books. What are your thoughts? Which ones you liked? Which ones you're like, hey, get it off your list, it's not good? And I'd be interested to hear if you read any of the books I just read, and what are your thoughts on it, or any of the books you're currently reading. Let me know, comment below, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.